All right, friends, you are in treat for a fun one. And here's the question we're going to explore. What is the best available training for aspiring apologists? And why might you consider studying with me in the Biola MA Apologetics program? Our guest today is my good friend and my boss, Dr. Craig Hazen. He is an author, speaker, founder of the Biola Apologetics MA program that we're going to get into. Craig, I've got a ton of questions for you. Just a little bit, we're going to start with your story to faith, your study of world religions at a UC school, a little bit of your thoughts on apologetics today. Then we're going to really shift to the program itself because people have a lot of questions about what classes are offered. What does it cost? What can I do with this? So you ready to go?
I'm ready for you.
All right, well, let's do it. So just start with your journey. You didn't grow up in a Christian faith. How did you become a Christian, and did apologetics play a role in it?
Yeah, thanks for asking that. I don't get asked that very often, strangely. But before I do that, let me hijack your whole program here and just tell people how wonderful it is to work with Sean McDowell all the time. In case you're thinking, that'd be a good gig working with Sean McDowell. It turns out to be true. It's a good gig. I mean, I call him the busiest guy in apologetics because he's constantly doing things, and all of them just wonderful moves on behalf of the kingdom of God. It's just tremendous, and he's writing books. He's always got two books going at the same time, and he's got a full speaking schedule. But here's the thing: he takes wonderful care of his family. And we don't watch that so carefully. How can he do all of that? But he never neglects his family. In fact, we travel a lot together, and he's always got one of his kids in tow, and it's just great fun. So, John, thanks for doing all that you do in the way that you do it.
That's really kind. I appreciate that. Thanks for saying that.
Yeah. So I did not grow up in a Christian home. I became a Christian as a senior in high school. But before that happened, I really was basically the village atheist at my high school or wherever I went. I really didn't have any bones to pick with the deity or whatever. I just didn't think there was one, number one. But more importantly, I didn't think you could know that there was one. And that's what I always asked Christians when I bumped into them. They usually were trying to give me a hard time on the high school campus, knowing that I was a bit antagonistic. But I'd always ask them, how do you know? I mean, that really, isn't it just a matter of blind leaping? Notice I didn't use faith. I just blind leaping is kind of the strange way they interpret faith. And that's the way I did too. So why would you embrace something that just requires blind leaping? And that was my biggest hang-up. So, I wandered around most of my senior year as a agnostic / atheist, and some cute girl invites me to a church.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. And I got, what harm could that do? So I went and, I hadn't darkened a door since I was maybe 5 years old, some Episcopal church or something our family went to and maybe on an occasional Christmas or Easter. But somebody dragged me down to this big place called the Calvary Chapel, Costa Mesa, ground zero in the Jesus movement. And there was this guy preaching that night. It was a Monday night, and they had, I guess, evangelistic services on Monday night. And the guy preaching had a lot of hair, and his name was Greg Laurie.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, so that was my first encounter with the gospel. Now, of course, if you follow Greg Laurie now, he doesn't have a whole lot of hair left, but then he had some hair and he had a mustache, and he looked like he did back in those old Jesus pamphlets that he used to draw. Oh, but guess who was playing the music the night I went? Some guy named Keith Green.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, that was my introduction to Christianity. The music
Wow.
of Keith Green, and then the preaching of Greg Laurie. I think the Lord had it out for me.
Wow.
And I remember the little gal who brought me to the church. Oh man, when they got to the altar call part of the service, I could just see her over there praying. Oh God, no, save this guy. Well, I watched. I didn't really know what to do at an altar call, and so they said if you'd like to receive the Lord, stand up and walk forward. So I go, well, I could do that. maybe then I'd find out what this is all about, because I was feeling something strange. I didn't know what it was. I just wanted to kind of do a little experiment and walk forward. So I don't know if this was just to antagonize the girl who brought me or what, but I waited till the last Luya,
Wow.
because they were singing Hallelujah, and I waited for the last Luya, and I got up and went forward. And we said some sort of prayer there, and then they took us to a back room. And I remember thinking, this is where they do the brainwashing of some sort. And so I went back into this big room, and they had counselors back there spread around the room. And little groups of new believers were supposed to gather around the various counselors. Well, after about 20 minutes, most of the people had dispersed, but it was me surrounded by all the counselors rather than the opposite. And I was peppering them with questions. And I had a lot of them. And God bless them. I don't know that they really answered any of them well, but this is very important. They knew where to go. They told me they loaded me up with books and said, you got to listen to this radio program and you got to listen to these cassette tapes, to date the whole operation. And they were on the phone with me the following week, checking up on me. And I got to tell you, whatever strange experience I had at that church was wrapped up tightly for me after I started to read these books and listening to radio programs and listening to the wonderful apologetics lectures that they turned me on to. I mean, there was this tight cord connecting my mind and my heart, and I just never turned back. It wasn't long before I discovered this thing is true, and I don't know how to run away from it anymore. So I just kind of gulped big and jumped in.
That's amazing. There's some pieces of your story I had not heard before, especially Keith Green and Greg Laurie. That's fantastic.
Like a gold star,
That's phenomenal. Now, those of you just joining us, we're here with Craig Hazen, author, speaker. He's a founder of the Biola MA Apologetics program, and we're going to get to the nature of that program, the classes, some of the details, etc. I see a comment here from Meredith Black. She says, hey, Dr. McDowell and Dr. Hazen, thankful for the Biola certificate. It really was a genuine blessing for my family and for me. Glad to hear that, Meredith. We're going to come to some of what that is and how it differs from the MA. But after becoming a believer, grad school, you studied world religions at UCSB. Now, we could have an entire podcast on that, but give us a little insight of what that was like.
Well, really, there's a backstory just to my doing a PhD in comparative religion, and that is one of the questions I had when I was wandering around in kind of a fog, not knowing if Christianity was true or not, was what about the other great religions? Sure, there's all these Christians wandering around, but what about the other religions? So I become a Christian, and now I'm still asking that same question. What about the other religions? I didn't have any experience with Buddhism or Mormonism or Islam, and I wanted to know something about that. I felt a little arrogant thinking that mine was the only way when there's these other faiths that I didn't really know anything about. So that was the magnetic attraction for me. So when I was in college, I was actually a biology major and ran physiology research labs, all kinds of stuff. So I was a major science nerd. But I took every philosophy and every religious studies class that I could pack into my schedule. So that was really helpful. And I started to really become interested in these other world religious traditions. So it made a lot of sense that if I wanted to, teach and debate and write in a particular field, I thought that would be a good one. Just religious studies in general, where you can do lots of different things. So I looked for the best program on the planet at the time when it came time for grad school. And UC, the University of California at Santa Barbara, was the up and coming place. And I think it's ranked really high. I mean, the only other places that would rival it would be, the University of Chicago or someplace like that. So they just had a wonderful program. And it was just so flexible. You could study just about anything under that banner of religious studies.
Interesting.
I get to study all the things that I really like, but it was quite the challenge. This is not the place you go to school if you are a Jesus-loving, Bible-reading Christian. It's not going to enhance your walk with God, But it also dawned on me that uh, there's a couple of ways you can go about studying apologetics. One is you go to a wonderful program like the Biola MA in apologetics, where you're going to have bright, clearly deeply devoted Christian men and women teaching you and praying for you and nurturing you and guiding you. So that's one way, and it's a very fruitful way. But there's another way that is a little dicier, and that is you can go into the enemy's camp and study. It's like back in the Cold War, going to some Soviet institution to learn military tactics. That's what it felt like. I loved every second of it, and I got to tell you, I was just attracted to those situations where I would have a lot of interesting opposition and a lot of fun debate material. And it wasn't long before word got out that I really was some kind of Jesus-loving, Bible-reading Christian. And oh my goodness. And some of my fellow grad students, they were pretty annoyed and unnerved by that.
Oh, interesting.
But it really panned out well. The Lord did some wonderful things in my midst. And I got to tell you, I think I've come to believe that the Lord is really close to you and ready to work his miraculous magic when you are on the front lines for him. And in that program, I was definitely on the front lines for him. And he would answer my prayers like on the spot all the time. I've never seen a thing like it since, because I've never been quite on the front lines as much as I was when I was going to the University of California doing religious studies. So it was marvelous. In fact, Sean, I don't know if I've ever told you this, but I may still hold the record for winning scholarship money at UC Santa Barbara.
Huh.
There were at least 3 professors who told me, he goes, I can't believe how much scholarship money you have won. I mean, you're not supposed to get rich as a graduate student. You're not supposed to come out of grad school with a down payment on a house, But I applied for everything under the sun that I could qualify for, and I won all of it. Every week I was getting large checks in the mail.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And I really did interpret it as God's favor, that he wanted me there and he was going to support me to the hill. Like, wow. And he did. When they first found out I was some sort of Christian, I could tell that it was causing some people some trouble. Then I got this opportunity to give a lecture. Get this, I got an opportunity to give a lecture to all of the grad students and all of the faculty in the department.
Wow.
It's like a special dispensation. They picked a grad student, and they picked me. Maybe it was because they wanted to see me crash and burn. But it went so well that I became their darling. Oh, an example. So my dissertation advisor was a top person in the field of religious studies. Her name is Catherine Albanese. And at about the same time, she was the president of the American Academy of Religion at the same time. And so I remember we were all attending the big annual meeting of the American Academy of Religion, and I saw her across a big, convention hotel lobby. She was way at the other side, and I saw her, and she saw me, and she waved at me, and she says, "Oh, Craig," and waved me over. And so I went over, and she introduced me to all the leading lights in religious studies. I mean, and at the end of introducing me, she says, "Yes, this is Craig Hazen. He's a fundamentalist."
Oh, wow.
Now, the fun part of her saying that is that she said that because it shows that she was so diverse in her thinking that she could actually have a fundamentalist going to her program.
That is great. I love that. Well, oh my goodness. I have so many questions for you about that experience. And maybe what we'll do is when we come back to this a little bit, one of your books called The 5 Sacred Crossings, you walk through 5 ways Christianity is unique compared to other religions. And a lot of this comes out of your study. Let's hold that for a second and maybe come back to it, because I've seen a lot of questions where people are wondering, what is the program about? What does it entail? So maybe tell us a story of why you started the Biola MA program. I don't even know a lot of the story, and then we'll get into some of the nitty gritty.
Yeah, I actually didn't start at Biola in apologetics. Right after grad school, I got hired in a strange job at a place called at Simon Greenleaf University in Southern
Mm-hmm.
California. It was a graduate school started by John Warwick Montgomery, one of the smartest guys in Christendom. I'm not kidding. He's still alive and kicking in Strasbourg, France. But he started this funky little school called Simon Greenleaf, which had a law school at its center. And then it had MA degrees in apologetics
Mm.
and in international human rights and in theology and law. And because of Montgomery's prowess, it was kind of booming. Well, at some point, I think the school board got together and kicked Montgomery out of his own school, and they hired me to run the apologetics program there. And so I did, and it grew from about 5 students to about 25 students.
Wow.
At the same time, another school was coming in interested in taking over the law school at Simon Greenleaf. Well, that was going, and they were going to cut loose the other programs, including the apologetics program. So about that same time, I had some backdoor negotiations with Biola, and ended up just walking over there and starting a program at Biola, and that was over 25 years ago now, and it just
Wow.
boomed, and it's still booming. I think it's the biggest one on the planet as far as last time I counted.
How many students do we have roughly?
Oh gosh, at our peak we had 300 a couple, before COVID. So
Mm.
I haven't done a tally recently, but it's around 200 probably or more.
Okay, now we have shifted fully distance. Used to be online. Now people can still take some online classes we'll get to, but people can do this completely internationally and never come to campus, right?
Yeah, I like to put it this way, that a person can do the entire thing at a distance if they want to.
Hmm.
We don't recommend that because we love to see you and we like to have you in our
Hmm.
classrooms and we like to interact with you and have lunch with you and have you meet the other students. And so that's wide open to everybody. We have lots of classes they can take on campus, but the whole thing can be completed at a distance. And so no matter where you live in the world, we can actually deliver this program, and it's first rate.
Well, I hope folks will come out for at least a weekend event or weekend class. I'm teaching one in the fall on sexuality. Friday, I think it's 1 to 10. Saturday, 9 to 5. Christmas time, I have all our local Southern California students over for kind of a McDowell Christmas party. Open it up, have fun.
We love that. That's when they respond. What was your favorite thing about the program? They go, Christmas at the McDowell's.
Oh my goodness, I didn't know that, but I thoroughly enjoyed doing that. Now let's get into some of the nitty gritty of what the classes are that are offered. So it's 39 units. Obviously, I should know this, but that's the latest count, right?
Yeah,
Break those down
39
for
units.
us.
We're determined to keep it under 40. Just
Good.
yeah, and it's always a struggle because some programs are just known in graduate schools to grow bigger and bigger. We're trying to keep it down and make it doable for very busy
Mm.
people in just a couple of years. Oh my gosh, and we just have a tremendous curriculum. And you know what I think really gave us an edge in developing a unique and very successful curriculum is the fact that we didn't actually spin it out of a theological seminary. We actually started kind of on secular ground and built it from the ground
Mm.
up with trying to figure out what would a thoughtful Christian person need in order to fulfill that command in 1 Peter 3:15. What are the current controversies? And one thing we discovered, obviously, is that things are always shifting and changing in the field of apologetics. The kinds of questions that we need to answer. And so we always have a huge number of electives for our students to choose from, and like your special course and sexuality and so on. I mean, these are cutting edge, hot button issues, and we want to be on top of them. So we get the local experts, in this case Sean McDowell, and we put them in front of the students, and they do a bang up job with that. But so we run a very flexible ship. We
Mm.
want people not only to have the timeless apologetic issues under their belt firmly, but we want them to have all the tools they need to leap into the controversies that are bothering church people today.
So some of those weekend classes would be like world religions. We'll teach classes on science and intelligent design. Excuse me, Stephen Meyer will come out and teach a class. We'll have Craig Blomberg do a class on the reliability of the New Testament. We've done weekend classes on Islam. What are some of the other weekend? J. Warner Wallace is adjunct for us, and he is kind of the ninja in how to do apologetics, like build PowerPoint slides, how to give talks, how to build social media, like a real toolbox entire weekend from someone who I think is the best at doing it. J. Warner Wallace teaches that over a weekend. What are some of the other classes that might be like weekend electives? Then we'll get to some of the core ones that I maybe missed.
Yeah, there's no definitive list because
Okay.
we listen to the students and what they might need or want. But that's where we get a chance to cover all of the various religions. Like we'll cover Mormonism and Islam, as you mentioned, and
Okay.
Kevin Lewis just does an amazing
He
job with a
does.
special weekend course on uh, biblical demonology of all things. You know,
Mm.
but it's a marvelous course, and it really highlights the importance of proper spiritual warfare. I mean, you name it. So if you're part of our program, if you say, we really ought to have a class in X, Y, or Z, don't be surprised if you have that next semester because we pay attention to that kind of.
We also have Tim Muehlhoff, who's an expert in communication, talk about how to communicate and really do apologetics in conversation and rhetoric. That's really helpful and practical. One of my favorites as well.
That highlights another strength of our program. It's not just about our faculty in our department. Like we've got John Bloom, Clay Jones, Kevin Lewis. We've got J.P. Moreland, William Lane Craig, and the
Mm.
gang. But then we've got the entire faculty at the Talbot School of Theology, New Testament experts, Old Testament experts, experts in theology, experts in church history, who can weigh in on things and come in and teach special courses for us. But it doesn't end there. Then we've got, starting to sound like an infomercial. Then we've got the rest of the faculty at the entire university at Biola. So we've got a film department and a communications department. So we bring
Mm.
guys like Tim Muehlhoff out, dust him off, and he's just a first-ranked teacher and theoretician in the field of communications.
Mm. Okay, so let's go back to those 39 units and tell me how they break down. How many are apologetics, theology, Bible? What's the big picture of that?
Gosh, I'd have to call up the website to tell you that, but
Roughly.
we we give all of the things you need. See, think about this. Many of you who are listening to this right now go, oh, maybe I don't really qualify for this because I don't have a background in biblical studies or theology or philosophy or something like that. The answer is don't worry about that at all. We give you everything you need
Mm.
to make a nuisance of yourself for Jesus in all kinds of new and exciting ways. We give you New Testament, Old Testament. We give you the essentials of theology. We give you a special scripture course, that grounds everything. So when you walk out, you'll have the basics tightly under your belt, and you'll have a toolbox where you can take on the biggest questions of the day. That's how we construct our curriculum to achieve those things.
One of the things I love about our program is we have students who are like right out of college, 23 years old. And then we have people who haven't been in college for 4 decades and maybe are retired, everywhere in between, every profession, national, international. There's a huge range. But sometimes students come back who have not been in for a while and just fear, like, I haven't been doing this for decades. Now, we have a first class on research and writing that just really helps to get them grounded and set up. But what might you say to someone who hasn't been in school in a long time and is like, I'm excited, but I don't know if I could do this again? This is master's level work.
They can do it. We know you. We know you can do it. In fact, I'm just going to assume you can do it. Here's the bigger question. We need you. We need you to do this. Oh my goodness. Sean and I and our other colleagues, we travel an awful lot. We're in different churches like every week, and there's a clarion cry for for people who know something about this, parents of kids in our churches and their grandparents of kids in our churches. Oh my gosh, they're fit to be tied. Their kids are coming home with the craziest ideas, and nobody in the pastoral staff, no, generally nobody among the parents, and none of the youth leaders are prepared to answer these things, and they're eminently answerable. So we need people who really can take on the big, important issues. Is it reasonable to believe that God exists? Is it reasonable to believe that Jesus is the unique Son of God? Are the Scriptures reliable? Can we get around the question of God, of evil and suffering in the world, and still make it to God? What about all the other world religions? What about science issues? We deal with all of those, and our students walk out of our program so confident that they can answer these things, because honestly, the questions that do come in aren't usually that challenging. And they're not usually coming from cutting edge people who study these things day in and day out. And so it's amazing how this kind of education, even if you just do our certificate program, can give you a tremendous leg up.
Well, let's come back to the certificate program. But I graduated Biola in 1998, took 2 years off, traveled with my father, worked in the inner city for a year, had an amazing experience, and then came back and did the MA Phil program and the MA Theology program at Talbot. And of course, did a lot of classes with J.P. Moreland, William Lane Craig, Scott Ray, Dave Horner, etc. Now, maybe it'd be helpful if you explain to some people. I got a few questions this week about the difference between the MA Phil program and the MA Apologetics program, because they're now both distance. What would be the difference if people are looking at those two?
Yeah, I've had a lot of discussions with our faculty and with the faculty that's dedicated to the philosophy program. And it's pretty clear that their program, the philosophy program, is primarily designed for people who want to go on and do more graduate work in philosophy. With the tools they give you in the philosophy program, you could build a pretty big philosophy machine. Our program is a little more street level. We want to be practical. We want to give people the tools they need to walk right out and make a case to a Mormon or a person who thinks that Christianity can't answer important scientific questions. We want to be able to give our students everything they need, the moment they walk out the door, to be able to answer the tough questions. The philosophy folks, they might need a little while to build an argument because they're given the raw toolkit. And if your desire is to become a professor of philosophy somewhere, definitely move in the direction of the philosophy of religion and ethics program at Talbot. Anything else is probably a good move to think about the apologetics program.
That makes sense. And I went on, did graduate studies, loved the MA Phil. I didn't tell you this, Craig, but I almost came back and did the MA Apologetics program. I was looking at it, thinking about it, and thought, you know what? I have 2 masters at this point. I don't know if I can afford a third. Time to go get a PhD. But I actually almost did the program. It was so appealing to me and interesting to me at that time when I was teaching high school full time. Here's a question that I think is really helpful that just came in. Let's shift to this. This is from James Mouch. I hope I said that right. Mouch or Mach. Regardless, James says, if this master's program doesn't require background in theology, how does it differ from an undergrad? He says, I have a BS in CS. Christian Studies. And that was so long ago, I don't remember what my GPA was.
Yeah, we give you everything you need in terms of theology. We give you the grounding. Now, clearly, master's degrees do not teach everything in the field. It's really preparation for lifelong learning. You become a person who can really do the research and read top level books and keep abreast of the facts and the new ideas. So that's always there. But people who are coming in with a background in theology, we don't want you repeating material. And so we evaluate those courses that you took and see if we can scratch anything off or replace something. And so we want, maximal learning for you. So if you've done some work in the past, we'll make sure that's counted properly.
That's really helpful. The only thing I would add is the amount of work and the level of work, of course, on a master's level is higher. So I teach one undergrad class, Gospel Kingdom Culture. This is a Biola undergrad class, and it's evangelism, apologetics, cultural engagement. And just the amount of work and difficulty is a 300 level junior, senior college class. It's tough. It's not easy. But compare that to a graduate program. I mean, in our resurrection class, we're reading N.T. Wright's full book, or a lot of it, Lacona, a lot of his book, a lot of my book in the Apostles. It's a good amount of reading for folks, which you would expect on a master's level. But back to what was said before, is I found students who are like, I just found apologetics 4 weeks ago. If they're willing to commit and plan ahead and maybe don't take 4 classes, but one at a time, they can do it. They can do it. And we have students taking our program who go on to study in philosophy programs or apologetics and do PhDs. So we're able to do both, aren't we?
Yep.
All right, good. That was the quickest response ever. I want to make sure I'm not missing some of these questions that are here. This might be interesting to folks. Tell us some of the grads that have gone through the MA program in 25 years that maybe people would recognize in the world of apologetics or outside the world of apologetics.
Yeah, I'm stunned how much our graduates have done once they get out the door with this MA degree. I mean, some of them are really top level scholars. And I wrote down a few names on the wall here. Guys like Nabil Qureshi.
Wow.
I miss him so much. You know, I remember him sitting in our classes, and he was just a force to be reckoned with. If you don't know his story, he was a convert to Christianity from Islam, was really doing amazing work in presenting the gospel globally, and then ended up getting a diagnosis of stomach cancer and died just several months later. At like 30 years old with a small child. It was really tragic. But what a brilliant man he was. He came to us with a doctorate already. He had an MD from
holy cow
school back east. So that's the kind of quality of students we end up attracting. So we had Nabil Qureshi, we had Mary Jo Sharp.
Yeah.
Just one of the top women apologists on the planet. Greg Kokel, may have heard of him. And Stand to Reason. In fact, if you know the organization Stand to Reason, which I hope you do, and you know like Alan Schleman and some of the others, almost all of them went through Biola Apologetics training and have done very well with it. Megan Allman, one of my favorite female apologists.
Wow.
She teaches at Summit Ministries in Colorado every year. And has been an integral part of Life Training Institute, one of the finest pro-life apologists that you could find anywhere. Holly Ordway, Hillary Ferrer, who started Mama Bear Apologetics. Doug Powell. Do you know Doug Powell?
I do, yeah. On our Israel trip, he was with us. Amazing.
Yeah, Doug Powell. The guy's a top-level rock musician and songwriter. He's an artist, and he's already written like 2 or 3 novels. He's amazing.
That's incredible.
Yeah, he's quite the guy. Jonathan Morrow, Melissa Travis, Chris Brooks, and so many others.
Wow, that's it. That's an incredible list. I'm not sure I was aware of it. Did Scott Klusendorf do the MA Apologetics program?
He graduated with an MA in apologetics.
I would say he's one of the top pro-life apologists out there, period. That's super cool. Now you mentioned You mentioned Megan Allman. By the way, did Elisa Childers do our program or no?
She like Natasha Crane did our certificate program.
Okay. Now let's pause right here. I want to come back to that. But what's the difference with a certificate program and the master's degree itself?
Yeah, the master's degree is a master's degree, and so it's the certificate program is like taking 2 or 3 courses in a master's degree.
Okay.
But I got to tell you, our certificate program has been a juggernaut for 20 years. And what I mean by that is students have taken it and they have loved it. And it has done amazing work training people around the world to do apologetics. It's basically a survey of the most important apologetics topics taught by experts in the field. And it's really remarkable. I still get notes. I just got one yesterday
Really?
about the certificate program saying what an amazing way to get trained it was. And I got to tell you, this is not fancy at all. We developed this 20 years ago when we had to, put people in a lecture hall, put a microphone in front of them, and then turn on the cassette recorder, to get the lecture. So it's all audio, but people
Hmm.
listen to it over and over again and build an apologetics and philosophy vocabulary. They begin to master the arguments just by listening. And it's also a great way to start a Master of Arts degree because you start with a certificate
Okay.
that can be converted into Master of Arts credit towards the
Okay.
MA.
There was a question right here that I was looking at. It said, the can certificate program apply to the master's degree later on? Maybe you'd get a class or two if you complete it. Is that right?
That's right. And it is a great way
Okay.
just to get your feet wet and get started.
Now, what's the status of that? It was up, it was taken down for a little bit. Is that kind of on delay right now?
I think we're days from having it up again on a whole
Okay.
new platform. And we're also redoing it at the same time. But these old lectures from 20 years ago, they're so good that we're going to call them like the classic lectures in
Okay.
apologetics.
That's awesome.
And then we'll redo it with lots of new questions and issues and speakers.
Perfect. Now my team should have loaded it. That helps me with this YouTube channel. There should be a good discount below for the certificate program itself. So you mentioned earlier a number of women in our program. Now it did occur to me that the image thumbnail I made for this is J.P. Moreland, William Lane Craig, myself, 3 white men, if I can do the math. You and I are right here, 2 white men talking about apologetics. There's a perception, obviously numerically, there's a lot of truth to this, that apologetics is kind of a middle-aged white guy movement. What's the diversity of our program?
It's about as diverse as the evangelical community that we serve. You
Hmm.
know, and I hate to point out some of our own, students and grads who have different colored skin, but I think that's just not fair. They're brilliant people who are out there doing the work, no matter what kind of ethnic or racial background they have. And I got to tell you, years ago, we kind of started a farm team for women because there were a lot of white middle-aged males in it. And so women who were doing the program seem a bit isolated. So we found a way to get them all together. And that has been a powerhouse. They started an organization called Women in Apologetics. In fact, I encourage everybody to dial that up on the internet, Women in Apologetics.
Hmm.
And they're writing books, they're doing conferences. Oh my gosh, they're ministering in circles that middle-aged white males just aren't getting into, and so I'm just thrilled to see this happen.
It is pretty cool how many students we have from. We've had a few students from Africa, from Europe, from Latin America, young and old. Like it feels like the diversity is increasing, which to me is just a positive sign that more and more people are having interest in apologetics and feel at home in our program, which is really cool. I want to read one thing. I actually got this yesterday from a former student of ours. I won't mention his name, but he's a youth pastor. And here's what he wrote. He said, "I just want to reach out and thank you for all the teaching and training you did for me at Biola through the apologetics program." He describes doing a series with their youth where they brought in speakers from different worldviews. They brought in speakers. They brought in a Mormon, brought in a Muslim, brought in an atheist to present their views to high school students. And then they trained their students just how to have a good dialogue. It wasn't a debate. It was a civil conversation. And he just said the experience for our students was incredible and watching them engage. He goes on and on. These are the kind of texts that I get, that why I do what I do. Because people ask me sometimes, Craig, maybe I shouldn't say this on air, but sometimes people say, "Sean, why do you stay at Biola? Just go speak and do your thing." And the bottom line is I love being a part of our team. I love what Biola does. And so many of the other things I do, I know real life change takes place in a community when people study. And if I can use the platform God has given me to encourage people to take ownership themselves, that's really where a lot of the life change happens. So this kind of encouragement is just coming in all the time. But what you said about women in apologetics, Hillary Ferrer's book, I think it was yesterday, I saw was one of the #1 books in apologetics with like 4,000 reviews on Amazon. I could be mistaken, but I think that's what it was. And I was blown away, which is like double evidence that demands a verdict. I was like, you go. So that movement is pretty exciting stuff. Okay, so let's talk about this for a second. Let me give my 2 cents and you weigh in. What I know you get this question all the time is, what can people even do with this degree? What can they do with it? Now, I wrote a blog. Maybe somebody could add it in the comments if it's helpful, just called How to Make a Career in Apologetics. And of course, there's like being a professor, which is not easy. It's competitive. There's not a lot of positions. There's teaching high school Bible. There's being a pastor or a youth pastor and weaving in apologetics. There's doing like YouTube channels or becoming a social media influencer. There's working for groups like Ratio Christi or for Stand to Reason or groups like that. I might have stolen all your thunder, but not everybody in our degree wants to be a professional apologist. Some do it half-time or part-time. Others just want to take the degree because they want to serve their church or they want to learn this and grow themselves. So weigh in on that, like what people can do with it and what other things people do if they don't want a career but still want to study apologetics.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. And you named a lot of the things that people do with this. I remember when we first started the program, somebody came up and said, I was a little bit wary about you starting this program at Biola because what are they going to do with this degree? And I said, you know what? I don't know. But so far, I've met a lot of our students and they're very creative people. I can't wait to see what they figure out to do with this degree. And that's exactly what happened. They're doing all the traditional things like pastoring and missions work and campus evangelism, but they're just so well trained in apologetics. They get to respond in ways that others can't because they just have a knowledge base. And there's a texture too that I love about our graduates. They can walk into a difficult situation, a contentious situation, and do it. And be at great peace. And because they have confidence, it's amazing what happens when you have confidence. And the confidence comes from the knowledge base that they have. They're pretty convinced that nobody's going to bring up something that they haven't heard before or so difficult that they, are going to be, rolling backwards or something. They come in and even if they don't know the answer, they're very confident. Say, I think we could probably figure that one out. And they go get an answer. So I'm really thrilled that the texture and the kind of interaction they're having with unbelievers and skeptics and so on. And I got to tell you, Sean, you've been modeling this brilliantly in the classroom, on your ministry trips, and now on your YouTube channel. I mean, I just love watching you, not just because you got some good info, but you're really showing us how to blow people's minds, really, because they're not expecting the Christian guys to be so calm and at peace and confident in what they're presenting.
Well, it's fun. I really have a lot of joy having conversations with people who see the world differently. And a lot of that comes from the confidence that Christianity is actually true and being able to back it up. Now, there's a certain elephant in the room I probably should have asked you a long time ago, but what does it cost? And are there scholarships to get a master's in apologetics at Biola?
Yes, in fact, we're pretty good at giving scholarships to students who are coming in at the outset. Just to encourage them in their studies and give them a good experience right off the bat. I think the current tuition is about $500 to $600 per unit, something like that, and it's a 39 unit degree. So you do the math, and that's basically what it costs.
That's fair. Now, at the sticker price, people are going, wow, I'm going to spend $20,000. And that's a huge investment. That's a lot of money. Would never downplay that. When you look at a lot of master's programs, that's actually far more affordable. That's something that you have to compare it to. Some students get help from their churches. Students do the program at different rates. Like if somebody was just going to power through the program, they could do it in 2 years, pay for it. But what if somebody said, I can come up with 3 units a year and spread it out? What are some of the options people have to complete this program?
I'll bet you 60 or 70% of our students do exactly that. They simply take their time enjoying the classes, take 1 or 2 courses a semester, and and that's kind of a financial aid project right there. They're just spreading the tuition payments out over a longer period of time. Plus, it gives them time to dig into the material more. They're just not going at a breakneck speed. And generally, their families and the people at their places of work like that because they're just not all stressed out because they're taking a full load of classes. So that's what most of our students do.
There's a lot of wisdom in that. It took me 3 years. I did the MA Phil and the MA Theology. I was working part-time. And at that time, my wife was working full-time as a teacher and really put me through my master's program in many ways. But I had a certain time frame where I had to take a certain number of units because I had 3 years to do it. And I loved it. I wouldn't change it for anything. I loved my undergrad experience at Biola, playing basketball, studying communications, life-changing. But my wife, who has known me since third grade, she said it was your master's program that she saw the most life change for me. Now, that's not a promise we can tell everybody else, of course. That's not my point. But it was really game-changing for me, Craig. And of course, I was doing the MA Phil program, but there's so much overlap with the apologetics program. At that point in my life, it just gave me confidence, gave me a vision, and gave me just a passion that I could do this. So it was game-changing for me. Now, in some ways, if I could have slowed down and done it over like 5 years and, just taken less classes and really soaked it in, would I have gotten more out of it? Probably on some level. But in some ways, you kind of got to take what you got and make it work. And that's what it sounds like our graduates do. Some just say, hey, I got a 2-year window. I'm knocking this thing out. Others, like good friends of ours, both husband and wife, so our best friends did the program. And during volleyball season, since she's a coach, she's like, I'm not going to take a class. But spring and summer, I'll take one class, 5 years maybe, wrapped it up. So that's really how our students process it, don't they?
Yeah, and a lot of our students are, in fact, I'd say most of them are mid-career professional people. I mean, they've got families, they got church commitments, they got busy work schedules. And so we made it a very flexible program where people can come in, start, do some classes. And if business gets too big or they're marrying off their daughter or something, they need some extra time, they just step out of the first semester and then they come back in. We've designed that into the program so that we can get people maximizing their efforts.
So it's different than when I did my doctoral program at Southern. I think they said, we're going to cap this thing at 7 years. You got to get done. Now, I always suspected if we told them that I was going to keep paying, they would make an exception. Never press that, but I assume that's the case. But they want you in and out within a time frame to stay focused. If you took 5 years off and came back, you'd have the same units and just picked up where you were, right?
That's right.
In some ways, one of the reasons I did my doctoral program was to force myself to study and to learn. And Craig, I'm a pretty disciplined person, whether it's what I eat or my time. It's just why I'm wired that way, maybe to a fault sometimes. But going into a program and saying, all right, this paper is due, I got to get up early. I got to read this. I got to fit it into my schedule. That's really one of the biggest benefits I see our students saying is they start to realize, you know what, I did have the time, I just didn't make it. And now that I need to find 3 hours or 5 hours or 10 hours plus a week, I just start getting more strategic with my schedule and find a way to do it. That's the story I hear. Do you hear the same kind of experience?
Yeah, absolutely. And people just, they find a way to do it. And I must say that's something we have over programs that, might be a little bit more boring. Like I don't want to bash on anybody who's an accountant, but if I was doing a master's degree in accounting, I'd have a little more trouble getting up in the morning to do the homework or whatever. But with this material, I mean, it's just so stimulating that I can't wait to crack open the new book. In fact, most of our students get a little bit giddy, they get a big stack of books, which should be intimidating to them. What they look at is like, oh, look what I get to read, and they're going to be forced a little bit by some, professors breathing down their neck to get their work done on time.
I see some questions here I'll come to, but I think some of the viewers, since it's on my channel, might be interested in the classes that I teach. I teach 2 core classes. Every spring, right now, I'm teaching Why God Allows Evil. And we go into depth on natural problem of evil, the emotional problem, the logical problem, evidential problem. We read I do Zoom meetings with a class probably about 3 times a semester. We'll talk stuff through. There's chat rooms. They're doing video responses right in a term paper. That's a class I teach. It's a staple. Everybody in our program will have Why God Allows Evil, will have me. The other class I teach is just called In Defense of the Resurrection. That's every fall. And that's also a required core class that everybody needs to have to graduate from the program. And then I teach an undergrad class, and then we'll add weekend classes. I did one on the apostles probably 5 years ago. Have done one coming up on sexuality, done a weekend class on reaching Gen Z. So if you did our program, you'd have me at least 2 times minimally. You could not get through the program without having me twice. And from what I'm told, Craig, I've never asked you this, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. I'm told I'm a tougher than average grader. Is that true, or is that not true on the term papers? I really want to hear what you think.
I have not heard that.
Okay.
So it seems to me I would have, but
that actually makes me feel good then. Maybe they're just telling me that, but it's not too bad. Okay, we've got about 10 minutes here.
Let me jump in because there's something that's crying out to be mentioned, and that is our MA degree in Christian apologetics does not stand alone. It's actually one of a family of programs. We have a Master of Arts degree in Science and Religion, which is an apologetics program. It has a little bit more of a secular taste to it because we actually want people to do that program and then be able to go out and do secular doctorates or get into secular history and philosophy of science programs and so on. But it is first rate. John Bloom, who has, he didn't have much better to do, so he did 2 doctorates. So Dr. John Bloom developed this curriculum, and it's wonderful. Some of our most prestigious graduates have gone through the MA in Science and Religion. So if scientific issues are the things that really turn your crank, we have the best program on the planet. In fact, it was voted the best distance program in religion.
So our MA Christian Apologetics will do resurrection, history, we'll have philosophy classes, and we'll have science classes. But the MA Science and Religion, along with the theology in the Bible, will have numerous science-focused classes. That's what that MA is. All right, now here's a question that has come up a few times. It says, can I enroll and take work to graduate without being a Christian? Do I need to sign a statement of belief?
Say that one more time.
Can somebody take the program who's not a Christian? And do those take it have to sign a statement of belief?
Yeah, they do. They need to sign basically a statement of belief. That's right. There's a doctrinal statement that students have to agree with in order to do a graduate program at Biola University.
Fair enough. Let's see. I'm looking for some further questions here. There's some people having apologetics debates in the comment section right now, interestingly enough, which is fine. If there's specific questions you have for Craig about the program, write question and load them in. We're not doing apologetics live here, but if you have questions for us, I'd love to float them to Craig, just anything related to the classes that we take. Maybe tell us, we mentioned evil, we mentioned resurrection. What are the other core classes, like philosophy of religion Scott Smith teaches, right?
Yeah, philosophy of religion, our ethics course, and our basic scripture defense class. We call it SAC, Scripture, Authority, Canon, and Criticism. And that's a great class if you want to know a basic Bible defense. It's first rate. Kevin Lewis has been teaching that for 30 years for us.
Now, the best way if people are going, okay, I want to hear more, if you just search Biola Apologetics, and technically we're under Talbot, which is the theological school of Biola. But if you search Biola or Talbot Apologetics, and I have a link below, you can look on the website and find stuff. Or what people can do is just email apologetics@biola.edu. apologetics@biola.edu. And we have people who can answer questions, can direct them, and get people signed up. How soon could, if somebody's like, you know what, this sounds interesting, how soon could somebody start this summer, or would it be next fall?
They could start this summer. They could even do our certificate program just to get their feet wet and see what the program's like. Hear from all of our lecturers on recording, and then they could even turn that into credit starting in the fall. And then they could just launch out, take our research and writing class
Mm.
and some other fun offering, and they'll be off and running.
So here's a question that might be really helpful. Amber, let me pull it over. Amber says, can you transfer from a different university into the MA program? What would that look like?
Yes, you can, especially if it's a Bible school or theological seminary. There's a lot of crossover classes, but even if it's at a secular school, I mean, if you've got I took a great class in church history at a state school, and that would easily transfer into our program. So we're very good at grabbing your transcript and finding what can move directly into your new transcript.
So if somebody has to have an undergrad degree in anything, they could potentially qualify for the program. Is that right?
Yes, that's the smoothest way to do it. But we've recently gotten approval for people who do not have bachelor's degrees. A certain number of them can be admitted into the MA degree in apologetics. And this is big. And I think some of you out there are going to be very attracted by this. You just never got around to finishing that bachelor's degree. But you're really smart. We know that. You read all of the latest apologetics books. You love this stuff. Guess what? There's now a wonderful pathway for you to get into the program.
Well, you just dropped a bomb. I didn't even know that. So
that's pretty new.
I guess there's probably a lot of criteria we won't walk through here, but if somebody's going, wait a minute, I haven't finished an undergrad degree and feels like they need to get 20, 30, 40 credits, but their real goal is to get a master's program, email into the apologetics at biola.edu, get some of those details. Because what's interesting about that is, I suppose if somebody asked you if you have a master's, nobody would say, well, do you have a BA as well? I mean, right? No one's going to ask you that. And you wouldn't get an MA degree. We're not going to grant it if you can't do the work at a master's level. So that is super cool. I had not heard that before. Some of our students...
I'm so excited about this because there's so many people I bump into on a regular basis who are, like captains of industry. They use their minds wonderfully all the time to solve huge problems, and they read apologetic material and can easily understand it, digest it, articulate it. There's no reason they shouldn't be able to do an MA in apologetics.
Now, the vision of the program is really to just train people to go be on the ground resources in their church. But we have a number of students who will go on and do graduate degrees as well. What are some of the degrees you can think of? And I didn't prep you with this before. A bunch of these questions I didn't prep you with. But will people go get degrees in apologetics? Will they go get from non-Christian universities in other fields? If people see apologetics at a Christian school, is this held against them? Does it open doors? How is it perceived when people want to go to higher education?
Yeah, all of the above. We've had students just move smoothly right into doctoral programs at Oxford and Cambridge, for instance. Some of the biggest name schools you could imagine. And students have gone into the area, like my area, religious studies. They've gotten admitted into religious studies doctorates after doing the MA in apologetics. We've had several students doing doctorates in history and philosophy of science. Just a whole range. You name it, and we probably have a student there.
So some of our students are really amazing. I mean, we have stay-at-home moms and stay-at-home dads. We have people in the military. We have people in the business world. We have right now one of the leading doctors in the world in his field who's in there. We have lawyers. I mean, it's just such an interesting group of students that we have that just makes my life so interesting and fun. Now, here's a quick question. It says, is there grading for this course? Now, keep in mind, this is a master's degree. Maybe Mr. Wallace just jumped on here, but this is a master's degree. It's 39 units. It's fully distance. So yes, there is grading. Now, Talbot has a tougher grading than an undergrad. An A is 94 to 100. 90 to 93 is actually an A minus. So there's less room to get that grade. And it's competitive in the sense that our students work really hard and are glad to be there and just turn in some great papers. So I think that's a quick one. Let me see if there's any other questions here. If not, let me see. Did I miss anything? Anything that you would add to this for people to know about getting signed up?
So something that is something we do on a regular basis is actually travel and speak and teach apologetics in churches and on various campuses around the country, actually around the world. If you'd like to host an apologetics event, I got a website for you, apologeticsevents.com. Apologeticsevents.com goes to the Biola Apologetics program. You can see what kind of events we have coming up. But you can also hit the button that says, I'd like to host an event, and we can explore that with you. We do that all the time. And it's a great way to introduce you as an apologist to your church community, because we bring in some heavy hitters like, J.P. Moreland and so on, Sean McDowell on occasion. And we do some wonderful apologetic teaching, kind of a little, get a fire burning in terms of apologetics at your church, and then make sure they know you are there to help keep the fire burning.
I love that. By the way, here's a quick question. Just want to make sure I know some people tune in and out. Stephanie Casey says, do y'all have anything available online? The answer is yes. The entire degree can be done distance. 100%. Again, we hope you come out. It's one of my favorite things to meet students in person. I love it. We carve out times for meals together. We just talk, we hang when these classes take place, but you can do it fully distance as well. Here's one more question that was asked. Oh, I might have lost it. Amber said, do you have options for students with disabilities?
Yes. Yeah. In fact, everything we do has to be compliant with the Americans with Disabilities Act. So we're really up to speed on that.
This one I think we may have addressed, but Charlie Huang says, could you put a hold on your degree if your life gets busy and come back to it?
Yes, happens all the time. You wouldn't believe how many students, because they're mid-career professional people. One of our students was a house appraiser, and suddenly the real estate market was going like a rocket, and he is just working 24/7, and he put his degree program on hold for a year and a half, and then jumped right back in.
And there's probably some people that put on hold for a lot longer than that as well, don't they?
Yeah. Yep.
I've got a ton more questions for you. We didn't even get into some of the unique studies that you learned at UCSB about what makes Christianity unique. We were going to talk about trends in apologetics today, but we'll just have to do this again and follow up. But again, for those of you who are interested in training in apologetics, Biola University, this was a few years ago, but it was bestschools.com or .org, ranked our program as the top of its kind, which was really cool. I teach a number of classes in it. We would love to train you to become an apologist. And the way you put it, Craig, is to become a nuisance for Jesus. And everywhere I go when I travel, I see our graduate students doing amazing things. It's so encouraging. Like in churches, here's one of the last thing I'll say, our grads, when they go to churches, many will help pastors when they're doing a sermon on the resurrection. Hey, give me some reliable evidence on, the resurrection. Or they're doing something in the Old Testament. Give me some archaeological evidence. Some will do counseling at their churches once they learn apologetics and how to answer some questions. Some will teach classes at their church, on and on. The whole heart of this program is to train you to become effective, and we love to do that. So you can check out the website below or email, again, make sure I get it right, apologetics@biola.edu. We'd love to have you. Craig, thanks for coming on, man. Hang on afterwards. I want to say thanks, but that was a lot of fun. Let's do this again.
Thanks, everybody.